Hello and welcome to today's lesson. We're going to be covering topics under the Standard 2.2 in 6th grade and then topics under the Study Island lesson, Real World Problems. So that means that we're going to be doing a lot of word problems, but don't get scared by the fact that there's word problems. You can do it. Just look for those key words that mean to add, subtract, multiply, or divide, and then just use some common sense about whether or not which operations you should be using. And as we're going through, go ahead and make sure that you're taking notes and copying down some example problems for you to refer back to when you are trying out these problems on your own. And if I ever go too fast, just pause the video and rewind and get caught back up. And you can even pause at the beginning of the problem, read the question for yourself, you work it out, and then watch the video to see if we get the same answer. And then you can learn areas that you are doing really well in, and you can learn about the areas that you still need to study and work at. And it can be a good way to self-check yourself. So I'm so glad that you joined us today, and let's go ahead and take some notes. So here are some general helpful hints for when we're solving word problems. So first you're going to need to understand the problem. So identify what it is that they want your answer in, so what it is you're solving for, and weed out any unnecessary information. And then you're going to want to devise a plan. What am I going to do to solve the problem? What skills am I going to need to know? And then carry out that plan. Do the necessary calculations and double check that you answered the question that was asked. And then review your work. Does this answer seem reasonable? And then check to make sure you didn't make any careless mistakes. So this first problem says Lisa's on a trip of 2,998 miles. She has already traveled 134 miles. She has 8 days left in her trip. How many miles does she need to travel each day to complete her trip? So her total trip is 2,998 miles. She has already gone 134 of those miles, and she has 8 days to do that remainder. So how many miles, and this is the question it's asking, does she need to travel each day to complete the trip? So I'm going to need to find out how many miles she has left. So I'm going to have to take the 2,998 and subtract it by 134 first. And when I do that, I end up with 2,864. So that's what I have left. She has left to do over 8 days. So it wants to know how many does she need to travel each day. That's going to be a sign that I need to divide. So I'm going to have 8 out front as my divisor and 2,864 under the division symbol. 2 can't divide into 8, but it can divide into 28. And it divides into 28 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. 28 minus 24 is 4. Bring down the 6. That's going to be 46. 8 divides into 46 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. That's going to leave me with the remainder 6. Bring down the 4. 8 divides into 64 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. Subtract those, and I'm left with the remainder of 0. So in order for her to finish this trip in 8 days, she's going to go 358 miles. And that answer makes sense. So my final answer is going to be C. This next question says John is putting tile down in his kitchen. He needs 26 rows of 26 tiles to complete the job. How many tiles does he need to complete the job? So he has 26 rows of 26 tiles. So in order to find that total area, he's going to have to take 26 times 26. So 6 times 6 is 36. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 3 is 15. And then I move over a slot. 2 times 6 is 12. Carry the 1. 2 times 2 is 4. Plus that 1 is 5. And then I add those two numbers. So I'm going to have 676 and tiles that he needs to have to finish the job. And I think about that answer, and that makes sense. If there's 26 rows and 26 tiles, that could be the answer. So my final answer here is going to be B. So here, Ricky's on a track team. Below are 4 of his times running 200 meters. What is the difference between his best time and his worst time? So his best time here is going to be his quickest time, and his worst time is going to be his longest time. So the quickest time here is 23.9. That's the smallest number listed here. And then his worst time is going to be the greatest number listed there. And looking at it, 224 and 1600ths is his worst time. So to find the difference, that just means to subtract. I'm going to subtract 24.16 minus 23.9. And remember, when you are adding or subtracting decimals, you need to line up those decimals. And so in order to line them up, I'm going to have to add a 0 at the end of 23.9. Which after decimal, you can add as many zeros as you want to the end of the number. And so then I just subtract. And when I do that subtraction, I get 20.26. Because remember, the decimal just moves down when you are doing addition and subtraction. So my final answer is going to be B, 2600ths. Next question says, Workers Inc. just bought 9 boxes of pens to put on their storage room for employees to use as needed. Each box contains 30 pens. If each of the 44 employers working for Workers Inc. takes 2 pens when they are first brought into the office, how many pens will be left in the storage room? So I know there are 9 boxes total, and each box has 30 pens. I also know there's 44 employers total, and that they each took 2 pens when they started their job. So how many pens are going to be left in storage? So I'm going to need to find out the total number of pens and the total number that employees took. So to find the total number of pens, I'm going to have to take 30 times 9. And when I do that, I get 270 total pens. And then to find the total number of pens that the employees take, I'm going to take 44 times 2, which is 88. And then my final step is going to be to take that total pens that were bought and subtract the pens that the employees took when they started their job. So when I do that, I'm going to get 182 pens are left in the supply closet as my final answer. And that, looking at the problem, seems reasonable. And so my final answer is going to be B. This problem says, Arp High School buys paper from an office supply store for $1 for every 346 sheets of paper. Each day, 1,730 sheets of paper are used at the high school. How much would it cost to buy enough paper for Arp High School for 5 days? So first, I'm going to figure out how much it costs to supply paper for 1 day. So for 1 day, I have a total of this many sheets. And I know that it's $1 per 346 sheets. So I'm going to see how many times does 346 divide into 1,730. So 346 can't go into 1, it can't go into 17, it can't go into 173. So I'm going to have to kind of guesstimate what times 346 is going to give me that 1,730. Well, I'm going to try 5 because it's in the middle. And it'll help me to see if I need to go higher or lower. And when I multiply that number by 5, I end up getting 1,730. So that means it's going to cost $5 for every day. However, we want to know how much it costs for 5 days. So I'm going to take that $5 times the 5 days and get $25 is the amount it's going to cost to cover all 5 days at Arp High School. This question says, Betsy has a field that is 179 yards long. If Betsy creates 1/7 yard sections from the field, how many sections will she be able to create? So she has a field with the following measurements. And she wants to divide that field into 1/7 of a yard sections. So that's my problem here. And so then I just need to remember my fraction division rules, which is the first number stays the same, the second number gets flipped, and it switches to multiplication. So here is a little trick when you are multiplying fractions. If you want to work with smaller numbers, you can cancel any numbers in the tops with any numbers in the bottom. So I see here that I can cancel out the 7s. If I factor out a 7 from both the top and the bottom there, they reduce down to 1. And now it's just easier numbers to work with. And multiply the tops, 179 times 1 is 179. Multiply the bottoms, 1 times 1 is 1. 179 over 1 just simply reduces to 179. So she's going to get 179 sections out of that field, which when I sit down and think of that number, it makes sense because she's dividing it into this bigger number here into many small sections. The next question says there are 76 graders at Wilson Middle School. 6% of the 6th graders will attend the morning assembly. How many 6th graders will be at the morning assembly? So here I have 60% of 6th graders. That of means multiplication. So that means I'm going to take 60% times the number of 6th graders, which is 70. So when we're multiplying by percents, though, we have to convert that percent into a decimal. And decimal numbers always look smaller to us. So we're going to have to move the decimal place 2 places to the left. And the 60% of a decimal is going to be 0.60 or just 0.6. So now I can take 70 times that 0.6. And my answer is going to be 420. And then to get the decimal in the right place, I'm going to count out how many numbers are after the decimal. So to the right of the decimal, I don't have any in the first, but I have 1 in the second for a total of 1 decimal to have in a decimal place after the decimal in my answer. So my answer here is 42.0 or just 42, and that's going to make my final answer B. Problem here says Molly is making banana nut bread using her grandmother's recipe. The recipe calls for 1/4 cups of flour and 1/4 cup of raw sugar. If Molly doubles the recipe, how much flour and sugar will she need? So doubling means that she just times it by 2, which also can mean that you can just add it. So for flour, you can take 1/4 plus 1/4. So that's going to be 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 1/4 plus 1/4 is 2/4. I can divide a 2 out of the top and the bottom of 2/4 and get a final answer of 2.5. So she's going to need 2.5 cups of flour if she's going to double this recipe. So it can't be A or C. And then 1/4 to double that means I'm going to add in another 1/4 or multiply it by 2. 1/4 plus 1/4 is 2/4. 2/4, I can divide a 2 out of the top and bottom. 2 divided by 2 in the top is 1. 4 divided by 2 in the bottom is 2. And this also reduces to 1/2. So I'm going to need 1/2 cup of sugar. So the answer that tells me 2.5 cups of flour and 1/2 cup of sugar is B, which is going to be my final answer. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you learned something new.